Welcome everybody to the Kim Barrett Show. I am your host, Kim Barrett, and on today's episode, we interview Mr. Calvin Coyles. So Calvin is one of our speakers from our upcoming Certified Ballers Live event. You can check that out over at www.certifiedballerslive.com.au. Now, on today's episode, if you ever suffered from overwhelm, frustration, anxiety, a little bit of depression maybe, I don't know what it is for you, you definitely want to check this out because we cover off on not only how those things show up for us in our lives, but how as a business owner and a leader, how you can manage them. We also go through and look at, have you ever experienced something where maybe you thought you were trying to fake it too much, you were going to fake it till you make it? Have you gone through a situation where, you maybe acted as if you were something else and it didn't quite sit right for you? Now, this happens to people all over the world. We want to cover off on how you can do that. And finally, we cover off on leadership and what really leadership looks like and how you can use that to ensure that every single day you show up for yourself, for your team, and if you're a solopreneur, maybe that's just you, which is cool as well. So we really want to cover off on those topics for you today. Now, as I said, if you haven't already, head over and check out www.certifiedballerslive.com.au. Calvin's one of our speakers. It's going to be an epic event, and I look forward to seeing you on the other side. But otherwise, let's jump into the show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Kim Barrett Show. We have, as I've already told you, our guest today, Calvin Coyles from Wild Success, also one of our speakers for Certified Ballers Live. So if you want to find out what all that's about, head over to www.certifiedballerslive.com.au. Calvin, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kim.
Pleasure.
I've been wanting to be on this show for as long as podcasts have been going, so I'm just really honoured to be here.
Well, I actually didn't think Calvin was going to make it today, guys, because over the past week, beating him 3 days in a row in squash, it's been hard. It was hard to get him to come in here. I was a little bit salty. He said this morning he was cooked, so he couldn't come and play on the final.
What the
final
people
day.
don't see is that we just did an international ping pong championship, and your boy won in straight sets, undefeated in ping pong. So ping pong is the gentleman's sport. Squash is, it's not.
Yeah, we all know where squash sits on that rung. Now, so I'm really excited for Certified Ballers Live.
As am I.
Yeah, so we've got all the speakers coming along, dropping a little bit of like a sprinkle of knowledge across that. So
can do that.
What I thought would be good for everyone to get an understanding of, because some of the things we're talking about is like really understanding emotions and peak performance for entrepreneurs, because emotions are what control them on a day-to-day basis.
100%.
So that is what everyone's looking forward to at CBL. But tell us a little bit, because you have what you call the WILD method.
Yeah.
Would you give everyone that's listening a little and watching a little bit of an explainer, like fill us in? What is that?
Sure, 100%.
What does that even mean?
So, precursor to this, I think in life and in business, if you do something long enough, you get pretty good at refining the process down. And as you know, because you've been in the space with us for a long time now, for us, we've got hundreds of thousands of clients now in 80 countries. And when you travel around the world and you work with different cultures and different people and different societies, you realize actually human beings are still human beings. There's some nuances, but fundamentally we all want the same things. And so over the last 6 years of working with so many people, we realized that most people tend to have problems in one of three areas. They, number one, lack vision. It's said in the Bible, if without vision, the people will perish. And so I think it's important to understand most people forget what it is to really set goals and dreams. And one of the things I'll be talking about at CBL is the distinction between setting bold goals or how goals. Most people set goals and they already know how they're going to go about achieving them. Whereas when we look at successful people, men and women that become ballers in their space, to use that lexicon, what happens is they set goals they don't know how to achieve, and then they go and find people that they can bring together as part of a team to then make that happen. So the first key pillar of our WILD method is helping people create what we refer to as a compelling vision. In essence, it's something that wakes you up on a morning and gets you out of bed. So that's the first key component. And I'll talk about why most people don't do that and why they've been conditioned not to do it and why most people have just sort of given up on that, because that does happen. And then they start to set goals that are more realistic. So that's the first part.
And so on that, when people they talk about goal setting and things like that, they hear like, oh, I've got to set these like SMART goals. Is that similar to that? Is it different?
Yeah, so look, there's some good stuff in SMART goals, but the challenge is one of the key components of it is that it has to be realistic and achievable. And we're both here today having done things that were completely unrealistic and completely unattainable. And so most people set goals based off the boundary condition of their thinking. In essence, they set their horizons on something that they can see, and they don't instead completely change the paradigm. And one of the key things you want to consider is, who do I have to become as a business owner in order to have the business of my dreams? I remember when we were starting Wild Success back in the day, I was struggling to break that $1 million mark, and we had these big goals. And I remember my dad saying to me off the cuff, he says, "Son, you're not good enough yet to run $1 million business." He says, "Why don't you focus on trying to become a man that's capable of doing that, and you'll surely have that business. But you don't have one yet because you're not good enough." Yeah. And so it's doing that personal growth work on, who do I need to become in order to have the business of my dreams, the marriage of my dreams, or the wealth or anything else that goes with that. So SMART goals are good, but they'll only get you so far, and people tend to use them more as a planning structure or a tool. I want people to understand how to really do a quantum leap in what they're considering, and set goals that are so far beyond them that they have to completely rewrite the rule book for themselves and go way out of their comfort zone. That's really what it takes to become the very best in your space. I mean, think about it from this perspective, from a baller's perspective. Kobe, LeBron, MJ, just to name a few, they didn't set SMART goals. I mean, their goals were to be the greatest of all time. And then they raised the bar and the standards, and they were willing to do more than anyone else was prepared to do. That's what we're talking about when we talk about CBL.
Yeah. And what do you reckon? So people always talk about, they hear that sort of thing, they're like, oh, so that means I've got to fake it till I make it.
Yeah.
What do you think of, what does that actually mean to you? Because you're obviously talking about there, stepping in, going, who do I have to become?
Yes, 100%.
Some people will be like, okay, so I've got to go and rent the Ferrari and stand in front of the fake house that I don't own, and there's only one thing that's important: knowledge.
Yeah. Okay, Ty. So, for me, I don't believe in fake it until you make it. What we refer to it as is working on it until you own it.
Yeah.
So I like to think, and this is something I'll be sharing at the event, that emotions are skills. And in popular psychology recently, we've started to make these distinctions around, most people think that they are trapped emotionally, because that's why most people live. So, for example, I would definitely consider that you have far more patience than I do, right? Mm-hmm. But I can develop patience. Like, you weren't born a patient person. You might have had a predisposition to that, but that's something that you've developed over decades, and in moments making deliberate, conscious choices. For me, I'm very outgoing, very confident, very outspoken. Now, they're things that I've developed over time. And so I don't believe on faking it till you make it. If you're not, quote unquote, a confident person, then don't fake being confident. But instead, there are moments when you're confident that we can grow and develop and anchor and condition into our nervous system so that we can become more confident. And it's like everything. I don't suffer with a lot of self-doubt. I know a lot of people, though, that are plagued by it. It's just that they're better practiced at that than me. If I wanted to doubt myself all the time, I'm sure if I practice that every day, give me a couple of weeks, I'll be pretty good at it. And that same thing goes for bigger emotions like depression and anxiety. They're the accumulation of the small things done either well or poorly, depending on how you look at it. So I don't believe in fake it till you make it, particularly from a marketing and branding perspective. I think there's actually something quite endearing about being more transparent and more real in a world that is full of people that are, trying to oversell themselves. And I think this is something that you've done tremendously well. And in many ways, we're a mirror for one another. If anything, I tend to be more on the side of bravado. And Kim will normally say that I add GST onto stories, meaning that we add a little bit extra on for the purpose of a good story. Whereas you're someone that very much undersells and then over-delivers, which is one of the reasons why I love speaking at your events, because I think that people come in with realistic expectations, and then we can add tremendous value. And I was at the first Certified Ballers event as well, and I went in with no expectations. I knew you'd do a great event, and you smashed it out of the park, which was why I was so excited to come and speak at the second one. So yeah, I don't believe in fake it till you make it. I believe in working on it until you own it.
Yeah. And so some people that are coming along, I think they see, and some people might have aspirations to be speakers that are like, oh, how can you guys sit there and do a podcast and a video?
Yeah.
When in my business, I struggle just to pick up the phone sometimes.
Sure.
And especially when people want to categorize themselves, and sometimes they will be like, oh, well, I'm an introvert, so I can't go and speak to all these people. And I mean, I've had similar experiences with that where I'm like, I am introverted, but what people don't understand with that, and what I think you cover off very well, is about like situations that bring you energy and emotions into it, because it's like being around people drains me like energetically.
Yes.
But I still do it because I'm conditioned myself to go, cool, this is an event, I've got to go speak to people or be on stage or whatever it is. Like, what do you think, what do you see, because you do work with so many people who are business owners and as well people across the board, like what are the big areas that that you think that people go, well, like, this is a problem for me, that they go, I don't know if there is even a solution to that, but they're things that you help people with.
Yeah. Look, it's a really, really great point. So there's a couple of different ways I can approach this, but I mean, one of the key things is that I always ask myself, is this serving me? Mm-hmm. So, for example, being a quote-unquote introvert or extrovert, whichever side of that spectrum you put yourself on, I mean, obviously it's ridiculous. We're not one or the other. We're all of them all the time. There's times when I'm drained by that experience, and there's also times when I'm energized by it. And often it has to do with the people, which is another great thing about the event. You got some great people at the first one. I know some of the people coming to this one will be fantastic as well. So the first thing is, being an introvert, if you are an introvert, is that serving you? Well, in times it will and in times it won't. So if it's not serving you in some capacities, change it. Now, obviously then your point goes, well then how do I do that? And there's a variety of skills and tools to be able to make that happen. Part of it is conditioning yourself not to fall back onto labels. For example, and I'll answer it in a roundabout sort of way. People, when we talk about, say, for example, depression and anxiety, big issue that we have in the way that we utilize language is through labels. And I know this because I've got two little brothers that have got quite severe issues. And the languaging that people can use is start to put labels and stigmas attached to people as well. And so to that end, it's like I have a jacket, but I'm not the jacket.
Yeah.
So for example, I can be introverted, or I can be experiencing a moment where I want to be introverted. It's different to saying I am an introvert. It's like I can experience depression. That doesn't mean to say I am depressed. I can take this jacket off at any moment in time. So if you're following along with the reference point, emotions and experiences are transient. They're like clouds on a breezy afternoon. They come and go. So to that end, we can condition our nervous system. And I think success really, when you think about it, is your ability to find a way to get yourself to do the things that you need to do when you don't want to do them. And for me, when you break that down, it ultimately comes down to emotions, and it's your ability to command and master them. So we're going to be doing some exercises. We'll do an induction with everybody live, and we'll go through a process called anchoring. And this is a way of training your nervous system to activate certain power emotions: strength, confidence, desire, hunger, motivation, inspiration. We'll make it up on the day depending on the audience. But that's a way of training your nervous system so that when you're in a moment where we all have, which is where we're stressed or overwhelmed or tired or exhausted or whatever it might be, it's being able to activate those power emotions to go back to that allow you to get the hard stuff done when you need to get it done. Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, I'm sure all have terrible days, right? Yeah. But it's their ability to respond to those challenges that sets them apart in the marketplace. And so we always say, use the emotions, don't let the emotions use you. And that just requires training, which is something that we're obviously going to spend quite a bit of time on at CBL.
And some of the stuff that you're sharing there and the tools that you'll be sharing with people are kind of based in the history of NLP.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. NLP, coaching, psychology, those spaces, neuroscience,
Have you been NLPing on us right now?
No, I'm not NLPing. I'm not NLPing anybody right now.
So the reason why I like to bring that up is because some people think about it and they hear about some of the techniques and they might, before they come along, Google and be like, what's Calvin done? He's on NLP, and he had the number one selling NLP online NLP program, and a lot of things like that. And they get all these stigmas and things attached to that, and they think
again, it's just another label, right? It's the same thing as we talked about before.
Exactly, and that's why I want to bring it back, because I think for a lot of people, it's like all you're doing with anything, with your business, whether we're going to be talking about marketing, sales, brand, whatever it is, mindset. It's about bringing awareness to what you're doing and making better decisions
100%.
With that, which I think is one of the best things that I learned from that. Is going, cool, even if I'm looking at marketing, it's like, great. If you don't look at your ads on Facebook and you're doing Facebook advertising, you don't know if they're doing good or bad.
Yes.
It's like cross your fingers, hope and pray. Same, and I think that it's easy for business owners to go, I looked at my financials, I looked at my advertising, to my branding, but they don't go, I looked at me or my mindset or anything like that and go, now what can I do to choose and make a decision about those things? Yeah. Which I think is super powerful. So some of the things you shared there, so we've got like when we do anchoring experience and things like that. For the everyday person, like what if I'm a business owner, I'm a solopreneur, maybe I've got a small team, how is that going to help me? Like, how's that going to impact what I'm doing?
It's such a powerful question. So let me take you through the stats on this, because this is so significant. In Australia, and I know we've got people traveling all around the world to do this event with you here in Perth, but in Australia, there's 2.1 million companies. Now, only 100,000 of them are what we consider big businesses with more than 20 staff. Yeah. So there's 2 million businesses that have got less than 20 employees. And obviously, both of our companies fall into that category. category. And, if you've got less, realistically, if you've got less than 50 employees, and even at that point, you would still say, we both spoke to Grant Cardone recently, he's got over 100 employees. If Grant doesn't show up today, they're okay. But if he didn't show up for 6 or 12 months, the business is in trouble because he's driving it. And so if you're a solopreneur, which is just one person, or if you've got a small team, you are that team. If you're on point, the business is going places. If you're not on point, it's not going places. And that only magnifies itself out. And so, the most essential investment that you can make is into understanding yourself and being able to then master how you show up for your team. You need to be able to have a storm going on in your company, but still be able to be the sort of steward of the ship for your team. And that's exactly what we're going to be looking at in this program, is to be able to help you really take control of your own responses. Because every year we do a full deep dive on our business and we look at where things went well and when they didn't. And often you do this long enough, if you've been in business for more than a couple of years, you'll realize that every problem in your business is because of you. Your team normally rock up and they'll normally do the best that they can, but ultimately it all comes back to you in some way, shape or form. If you take extreme ownership, you realize you're the person to blame at the end of the day, or you're certainly the person that's responsible. So what we want to do is help you understand that you're ultimately going to be the person that's the quarterback in your business. No matter how big you get, unless you're talking about $1 billion company, which is a whole nother kettle of fish, but if you're at a high 6-figure, 7-figure, 8-figure company, it's all about you ultimately. It's about how you show up and how you drive performance. If you don't have personal performance, you can't generate performance in other people because you are a mirror for that. So we're going to do a lot of work on that space. And most people have vision. If you're an ambitious entrepreneur, you've got that. What most people fall down on, though, is that they don't know why they take 1 step forward and 2 steps back. And they might say that it's a Facebook marketing problem or challenge, or it might be a lead generation problem or a sales problem. But the reality is it's all a reflection of the individual. And we tend to self-sabotage in 5 ways. We self-sabotage with our emotions. We self-sabotage with our behaviors. We self-sabotage with our language and our focus. We focus on what's working or what's not working all the time. We have limiting beliefs, or we have poor value structures. And those things they're the immovable objects that, unless you are aware of them and you go, well, geez, it's like someone on a diet. You say, well, if you're on a diet and you keep trying to do the same diet, but you keep going and eating the same foods, well, we've got to make some changes there, because otherwise you're setting the plan up for failure. And as you said, most people have a hope and pray plan. And what you want to do is have a really clear understanding of, this is what we're going to do. We need to make sure we're in full alignment. And I need to be personally fully in alignment with the project or the business, but I also need the team to be fully in alignment. And this only magnifies out. Like, it's tremendously complex to try and get your own shit sorted out, to make sure that you're actually rocking up and performing every day. But then when you have 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 people in a team, well, now that complexity doesn't just 10x, it indexes, because now there's all of those nuances. I mean, we're just literally having a conversation. Last week, the team's doing super well. This team has been some breakups. It's like, oh shit, this is what happens. This is life every day. As a business owner, this is what I would say to everybody. Most people, and we talk about this, leaders anticipate and act. Followers hope and then react. So if you're out there as a business owner, you're like, it's all good, I promise you the storm's coming. Right? If you've anticipated the future, though, you can prepare accordingly. I wake up knowing that there's always going to be something that goes wrong in the day. Not from a negative place, but rather just going, I anticipate there will be a problem or a crisis, because that's what happens. And I'm going to react and respond accordingly. Therefore, I'm never reactive. I'm always proactive. And if you have that awareness of things, that makes it all happen. But to be fair, it's easier said than done, because when you're in the trenches, when the cash flow is tight, when the clients are complaining or your people asking for refunds, when your staff are sick or they've caught, and that pressure mounts on you, it's your ability to breathe into that and still move forward, which is just conditioned and conditioned and conditioned.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think one of the big things there is as well that people anticipate and they think of, if you remove the feeling that problems are bad, it's problems are a cost of doing business.
Exactly.
It's like every day there's going to be a problem.
And if you're smart and you're in the right mindset, it becomes an opportunity. Right? You use it as a setback for an opportunity for a comeback. So important.
Yeah, and I think that's important. That's why everyone, if you're listening in, any of these things that we've been sharing has resonated with you, has ticked the box, and you've gone, that sounds like me and something I want to deal with. I encourage you, get along, head out and check out www.certifiedballerslive.com.au. get a ticket and come along because...
Get the best ticket.
Yeah, get a baller ticket, right?
You want to sit at the front.
With the right people. There's going to be a whole bunch of Calvin's crew there. He's going to be there all weekend, as are all our speakers, as far as I'm aware so far. They're all going to be there the whole time. So the people that you hang around are the people that you become. So I encourage you to get along. Now, I always like this question, just because it makes the guest think, and I like to see what people say. What's one question that I didn't ask you that I should have?
Oh, that's great. I mean, there's so many questions you could have asked me. What's one question that you asked me that
I didn't ask
you didn't ask that you should have? Maybe why you do it. And I guess to answer that question, for me, I grew up, my family came to Australia when I was 4, and they had to restart their whole lives. And I watched my grandparents work for the next 20 years, 7 days a week, the two of them, and then they retired, very financially well off, but it took tremendous effort for them to do that. And for me, I grew up in a family that didn't have, wild for us is wellness, income, love, lifestyle, direction. I grew up in a family that didn't have their wellness sorted out, didn't know about the finances, didn't have great relationships. Mum and dad have both been obviously separated. Lifestyle was, doing the best they can, but not living the best lifestyle. And then from a purpose and direction, it was like, we're just going through the motions. And I wanted something more than that. And so, for me, it's been about how do I create that in my life, but then as a result of that, lead by example to help other people do the same. And I think one of the biggest things I want to share to people is that the problems and challenges that you have today are because you are trying to figure it out on your own. And we've been conditioned since primary school that if Kim's really good at marketing and it's a test and I go, Kim, what's the answer? That's called cheating in school. In business, it's called collaboration.
Yeah.
It's called joint venture partners. We were joking before where I would call Kim, and this is on some days probably 6 to 8 times in a day. And the call is always the same. Hey, Kim, just a quick one, right? Or hey, bro, just a quick one, right? And it's never a quick one, right? But the point being is that allows me to accelerate my performance in my businesses so much because I know that Kim has that answer and I don't need to hold that in my space, right? And we do the same with our clients. So the principle being is that for me, it's about how do you have it all? How do you have a wild life for us, which is the opposite of living in captivity? And how do you have that? For me, it's like I've been able to create that in my life. And we were able, obviously, to do it probably at 25, 26. We're now 29. Ash and I get to live a phenomenal life. But it's like, how do you do that for other people as well? And that's really what this is all about for us. So that's probably the big thing I want to share to everybody. It's like you've got to have people in your corner, not just that you are the average of people you hang around, but rather that you are the people that you can lean on for advice and insights. When I have a marketing problem, I call you because I know you're the best in the world at that space. And that allows me to move further faster. In the same token as well, if there's a performance challenge in your team, I'll get the call because that I can be able to give you an insight or something to that effect. So it's all about being able to surround yourself with a brain's trust that can support you, which is why the networking at CBL, I mean, for me, the content that you did in the first one was excellent. It always is. Admittedly, we have such a close relationship. I knew a lot of that already. But what I didn't anticipate was just the caliber of the people in the room and the conversations. I mean, we're still doing business with people from that event. So, I'm very excited about that component of it.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. So, guys, again, thank you so much, Calvin, for your time.
You're welcome.
Check out certifiedballerslive.com.au. Calvin also is the host of his own podcast, The Wildcast. So we'll link to that in the show notes. So if you want to hear more in the lead up to CBL after you've already got your ticket, I encourage you to go subscribe and check out his podcast there as well because it's his epic. And guys, as always, until next time, I am Kim Barrett. Y'all have been awesome. Adios.